My name is Amanda Miller, and at 28, I never expected to become the center of a family war. When my beloved Grandma Eleanor passed away last month after her long illness, I discovered through my cousin's accidental text that I was deliberately excluded from the will reading. Despite the knot in my stomach, I showed up anyway. "We already divided everything," my Aunt Judith announced with a smirk. "You weren't invited for a reason." Then the lawyer frowned. "But her name is the only one in the will." The room went deadly silent. If you've ever felt unfairly excluded by family, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment about where you're watching from. Family drama happens everywhere. And I'm about to share how mine unfolded in ways no one expected. Growing up as the daughter of Grandma Eleanor's youngest son, Robert, wasn't always easy. But my father made sure I had a happy childhood. He was the family rebel who chose to become a high school teacher rather than join the family investment firm. My mother Samantha was a nurse, and they raised me with values centered around helping others rather than accumulating wealth. Every Sunday we would visit Grandma Eleanor's Grand Victorian house in the historic district of Boston, a beautiful relic that had been in our family for generations. When I was 12, everything changed. My father died suddenly of an aneurysm, and my mother struggled to cope both emotionally and financially. Grandma Eleanor stepped in without hesitation. "Amanda will live with me part of the week," she announced to the family, brooking no argument. For the next 6 years, I split my time between my mother's modest apartment and Grandma's house. While my mother worked double shifts to keep us afloat, Grandma became my second parent. "You're like me, Amanda," she would tell me as we sat in her garden. "You see people for who they are, not what they can give you." Her words shaped me more than she ever knew. Grandma Eleanor wasn't your typical wealthy widow. She wore simple clothes, volunteered at soup kitchens, and quietly donated to causes she believed in. The grand house was her one indulgence, a home filled with memories rather than showcased wealth. My Uncle Philip and Aunt Judith never understood her choices. They lived in modern mansions in the suburbs, drove luxury cars, and constantly pressured Grandma to live up to her status. When I decided to follow my mother's footsteps and become a nurse, specifically choosing hospice care, my extended family was perplexed. Uncle Philip cornered me at Thanksgiving dinner when I was 21. "You could work for the family business, Amanda. Why waste your time on a career with such a low ceiling?" He swirled his expensive bourbon while looking down at me. "Your grandmother could make one phone call and set you up for life." I simply smiled and said, "I want to earn my own way, Uncle Philip." My cousins Rachel and Nathan, both products of prestigious business schools and working for their father, found my choice incomprehensible. They had grown up expecting inheritance and connections to pave their way. Rachel once asked me, completely seriously, "But don't you want to be rich?" The concept that I might value something beyond money was foreign to them. As Grandma aged into her 80s, her health began to decline. I started visiting her twice weekly, bringing groceries, helping with medication, and often just sitting with her. We would bake together using her old recipes, the same ones she had taught me as a child. Her spice cookies were legendary in the family, but I was the only one who knew the secret ingredient was a dash of black pepper. "You've got flour on your nose again," she'd laugh, reaching up with a tissue. Even as her body weakened, her mind remained sharp and her wit quick. During these visits, she would tell me stories about our family history that no one else seemed interested in hearing. How her own grandmother had been one of the first female doctors in Massachusetts, how the family fortune had originally come from her grandfather's invention of a specialized textile machine. Stories of struggle, perseverance, and occasional failure that humanized our family beyond the polished facade presented at holiday gatherings. "Remember, Amanda," she told me during one such afternoon, "wealth doesn't make a person worthy. How they treat others when they think there's nothing to gain, that's the true measure of character." Meanwhile, as Grandma's health issues became more pronounced, the rest of the family visited only sporadically. Uncle Philip would stop by monthly, spending more time examining the condition of the house than connecting with his mother. Aunt Judith would bring expensive gifts that Grandma had no use for, then leave after precisely 1 hour. My cousins rarely visited unless there was a holiday meal involved. The December before Grandma passed, she gave me a small wooden box. "This was my mother's," she said, placing it in my hands. Inside was a simple pearl necklace, nothing flashy or particularly valuable. "It's beautiful," I said, genuinely touched. "I want you to have it now," she insisted. "The others would just see pearls, but you'll understand their value comes from who wore them." I had no idea then that this small gift would later be held against me. The last conversation I had with Grandma, just a week before she passed, still echoes in my mind. She was having a good day, sitting up in her favorite chair by the window. When I was about to leave, she took my hand with surprising strength. "Amanda, I've been watching all of you for years," she said, her blue eyes clear and direct. "I want you to know that I see everything, and soon I'll be making things right." I assumed she was talking about finding peace before her passing. I had no idea she was planning something that would change all our lives forever. The first major rift in our family happened 3 years ago when Grandma was 85. Uncle Philip called a family meeting at Grandma's house, ostensibly to discuss her care. When I arrived, I found not just family, but also a real estate agent waiting in the living room. "We've been discussing selling the lake house," Uncle Philip announced, referring to our family's vacation property in New Hampshire. Grandma had spent every summer there since she was a child. "It's sitting empty most of the year, and the maintenance costs are ridiculous." I glanced at Grandma, whose expression was carefully neutral, but I knew her well enough to see the tightness around her mouth. "Has Grandma agreed to this?" "Yes." Uncle Philip waved dismissively. "Mother understands it's the practical choice. At her age, she can't enjoy it anymore anyway." "Actually," I said, "we were just talking last week about her wanting to spend a few weeks there this summer." The room went silent. Aunt Judith cleared her throat. "Amanda dear, perhaps you misunderstood. Mother knows her limitations." Grandma finally spoke up. "I did say that to Amanda. I have no intention of selling my lake house." The real estate agent awkwardly excused herself. Once she left, Uncle Philip turned on me. "You always do this," he snapped. "You think you know what's best because you spend more time here, but you don't understand the financial considerations." "What I understand," I replied evenly, "is that Grandma should make her own decisions about her property." That night, after everyone else had left, Uncle Philip cornered me in the kitchen. "Listen carefully," he said, his voice low. "You may think you're special to her, but you're pushing your luck. Don't forget who built this family's wealth, and it certainly wasn't your father." The jab about my father stung, but I stood my ground. "This isn't about money, Uncle Philip. It's about respecting Grandma's wishes." From that day forward, Uncle Philip began what I can only describe as a campaign against me. It started subtly. Comments to other family members about how I was manipulating Grandma, suggestions that I was positioning myself for special treatment in the will. By Christmas that year, it was clear that many in the extended family had turned against me. At the holiday dinner, Aunt Judith accidentally excluded me from the family photo. Cousin Rachel made pointed comments about fortune hunters, while looking directly at me. Even my mother's sister, Aunt Grace, who had always been kind to me, was noticeably distant. After dinner, I overheard Uncle Philip talking to my cousin Nathan. "We need to protect Eleanor from Amanda's influence. She's got her wrapped around her finger, and who knows what she's convincing her to do with the estate." I tried to address these suspicions directly. I sent emails to my aunts and uncles explaining that I had no interest in Grandma's money, that I just wanted her final years to be comfortable and on her terms. The responses were tepid at best. Aunt Judith replied with a curt, "We all want what's best for Mother," while others didn't respond at all. The following Easter, the family held a gathering at Uncle Philip's house. I wasn't invited but learned about it through social media when Rachel posted photos. In one picture, Grandma sat in the corner, looking frail and confused. I called her that evening. "Did you enjoy the Easter gathering?" I asked carefully. "It was fine," she said, then lowered her voice. But they didn't serve the deviled eggs the way I like them. And Philip's house is always too cold. I wish I could have been there, I said. There was a pause. You weren't invited, she said, the genuine surprise in her voice confirming my suspicions. She hadn't been told I was excluded. As Grandma's health declined more rapidly, the family began actively limiting my access to her. Aunt Judith instituted a visiting schedule that allocated me only 2 hours on Sunday afternoons, claiming it was to avoid tiring Mother out. When I arrived for these visits, I often found a cousin or aunt suddenly deciding to drop in at the same time, making private conversations impossible. In response, I found creative ways to maintain our connection. I would bring lunch to share with Grandma on my days off from the hospice center. The home health aide, Maria, who genuinely cared for Grandma, would sometimes call me directly when she thought Grandma needed company or was having a particularly good day. The last Christmas before she died, I wasn't invited to the family gathering at all. I received a text from Aunt Judith. We're keeping the holidays small this year. Mother needs rest. Later I discovered from Maria that small meant everyone except me. So on Christmas Eve I dropped off a package with Maria, Grandma's favorite spice cookies that we used to bake together, a soft cashmere shawl in her favorite blue, and a photo album I'd created with pictures from her lake house across the decades. When Grandma passed away in April, I didn't get the news directly from family. Maria called me in tears from Grandma's house. By the time I arrived, Uncle Philip and Aunt Judith were already there, speaking with a funeral director about arrangements. "Oh, Amanda," Aunt Judith said with artificial sweetness when she saw me. "We were going to call you, of course." The funeral was a parade of family politics. I was seated in the third row behind extended family members who had seen Grandma maybe twice in the last decade. I wasn't asked to speak, despite having spent more time with her than anyone in recent years. Uncle Philip delivered a eulogy that focused largely on Grandma's late husband's business acumen and the legacy he had left the family. Through it all, I kept thinking about what Grandma had said about making things right. I had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. 2 weeks after the funeral, I was preparing dinner in my small apartment when my phone pinged with a text message. It was from my cousin Rachel, clearly sent to a group by mistake. "Will reading tomorrow at Harrison's office. 2 p.m. Mom says not to tell Amanda." I stared at the message, my stomach dropping. A second later, another message followed. "Sorry, wrong thread. Ignore that, please." I sat down at my kitchen table, a cold feeling spreading through me. So this was how it would be. They weren't even going to tell me about the will reading. Whatever inheritance Grandma may have left me, they were apparently planning to keep me in the dark about it entirely. All night I debated what to do. Part of me wanted to respect their wishes, to rise above the pettiness. I had never cared about Grandma's money. Our relationship had been about love, not inheritance. But another part of me, a stronger part, felt that Grandma would want me there. If nothing else, I deserved to hear her final wishes, even if she had left me nothing. By morning I had made my decision. I called in to take the day off from work, something I rarely did. I carefully selected my outfit, a simple navy blue dress that Grandma had always complimented, professional but not showy. I wanted to look respectful, not like someone desperate for money. As I drove to the law office in downtown Boston, my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I rehearsed what I might say, how I would handle the inevitable confrontation. In the parking lot, I sat for several minutes, gathering my courage. "Stand up for yourself, Amanda," I could almost hear Grandma say. "You belong anywhere I wanted you to be." The law office of Harrison and Associates occupied the top floor of a distinguished old building. When the elevator doors opened, I saw them immediately. Uncle Philip and Aunt Judith, my cousins Rachel and Nathan, Aunt Grace and her husband Tom, even distant cousin Louis, who had barely spoken to Grandma in a decade. They were clustered in the waiting area, speaking in low voices. Aunt Judith saw me first. Her face froze in mid-sentence, then quickly rearranged itself into a mask of disapproval. "Amanda," she said loudly, causing everyone else to turn. "What are you doing here?" I lifted my chin slightly. I'm here for Grandma's will reading. Uncle Philip stepped forward, physically placing himself between me and the group. You weren't invited. This is for family. I am family, I said simply. You know what he means, Rachel interjected. Family who respected Grandma's wishes instead of trying to influence her. Before I could respond, a door opened, and an elderly man with silver hair and kind eyes appeared. Are we all here for the Eleanor Miller estate? He asked, then noticed the tension. Is there a problem? Aunt Judith stepped forward with her most charming smile. Mr. Harrison, there seems to be a misunderstanding. Amanda wasn't supposed to be included in today's reading. Mr. Harrison looked confused. Miss Amanda Miller, Eleanor's granddaughter? Yes, that's me, I confirmed. He consulted his clipboard. Then you're definitely supposed to be here. Please, everyone, come in. The conference room was elegant but not ostentatious, with a long mahogany table and comfortable leather chairs. I took a seat near the door, feeling every eye on me. The whispers were barely concealed. She must have found out somehow. Phil is going to be furious. After everything she pulled with the lake house. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat, bringing the room to order. Before we begin, I should mention that I was Eleanor's friend as well as her attorney for over 30 years. She was very specific about her wishes, and I intend to honor them exactly. He began to reach for a folder, but Aunt Judith interrupted. Mr. Harrison, I feel I should explain the situation with Amanda. She wasn't invited today because we've already discussed the distribution of most items. We didn't want to waste your time. I felt my face burning as everyone turned to look at me again. We already divided everything, my aunt announced with finality. You weren't invited for a reason. Mr. Harrison frowned, looking genuinely puzzled. I'm afraid there's been a serious misunderstanding, Mrs. Carter. Nothing should have been distributed yet. He looked directly at me. And as for Ms. Amanda Miller not being invited, he opened the folder in front of him and adjusted his glasses. That would be highly irregular considering the contents of the will. What do you mean? Uncle Philip demanded. Mr. Harrison looked up, his expression professionally neutral but with something like satisfaction in his eyes. I mean that her name is the only one in the will. The room went deadly silent. I felt as though all the air had been sucked out, leaving us in a vacuum where no one dared to breathe. That's impossible, Uncle Philip finally sputtered. There must be some mistake. I assure you there is not, Mr. Harrison replied, his tone making it clear he was not a man who made mistakes. Perhaps it would be best if I simply read the will as Eleanor intended. Mr. Harrison put on his reading glasses and began in a clear, steady voice. I, Eleanor Catherine Miller, being of sound mind and body, hereby declare this to be my last will and testament, revoking all previous wills and codicils. The formal legal language continued for a moment before he reached the critical section. After careful consideration and observation of my family over these past years, I have come to a decision regarding the distribution of my estate. I hereby bequeath all my property, both real and personal, including but not limited to my primary residence at 47 Beacon Hill Avenue, my vacation property at Lake Winnipesaukee, all financial accounts, investments, personal belongings, and family heirlooms to my granddaughter, Amanda Rose Miller. There was a collective gasp. Rachel dropped her water glass, sending it shattering across the hardwood floor. No one moved to clean it up. This can't be legal, Uncle Philip said, his face turning an alarming shade of red. Mr. Harrison continued as if he hadn't been interrupted. I have enclosed a personal letter explaining my decisions, which Mr. Harrison will provide to Amanda privately. However, I wish to make clear that this decision was made with full awareness and careful consideration. He looked up from the document. There is more. But perhaps we should address the immediate concerns first. Aunt Judith was crying now, mascara tracking down her cheeks. After everything we did for her, the doctor appointments, the family dinners, maintaining her social standing when she insisted on associating with those charity people. Nathan leaned forward. We'll contest it. She was clearly not of sound mind. Mr. Harrison shook his head slightly. I would advise against that course of action. Eleanor anticipated this reaction and took extensive measures to document her mental competence.